Welcome back. From the observation deck, let's look at something the mind does that most of us never name.
Somewhere in your recent texts is a conversation where you gave almost enough. You answered within the hour. You said the right things. You asked the question that made them feel heard. But there was one more thing you could have done. One contact you could have forwarded, one specific piece of information that would have closed the loop entirely, and you didn't send it. You said it didn't come to mind. It came to mind. You scrolled past it. Maybe it was a friend looking for a therapist, and you know a good one, but you said, "I think I heard of someone. I'll look later." Maybe it was a colleague stuck on a problem you'd already solved, and you sent a nudge in the right direction but kept the full method to yourself. Maybe it's smaller. A family member venting about a situation you could resolve in one phone call, and you listened beautifully. And you did not make the call. You call it not wanting to overstep. You call it respecting their process. Sometimes you call it being tired. But underneath those labels is something quieter, and it's worth looking at without flinching. The kinder, more biological truth is this: you're not withholding because you're selfish. You're withholding because some part of your nervous system learned early and thoroughly that being needed is the safest version of being loved. Think of it like a key that only opens one door. At some point, holding a key that someone else needed was the only form of connection available to you. Maybe full solutions were taken for granted and never thanked. Maybe being completely helpful once left you without a reason to be called back. Maybe the people who mattered most to you only showed up when there was a problem to solve together. The key worked. You kept making sure the door stayed locked enough that you'd still be called. The problem is that a key designed for one door doesn't know it's been moved to a different house. Attachment researchers describe this as a proximity strategy, a learned behavior the nervous system uses to maintain closeness when closeness feels conditional. In avoidant and anxious attachment patterns studied by Bowlby and later researchers, partial withholding isn't cruelty, it's regulation. It's a system managing the threat of abandonment with the only tool it was ever given: controlled indispensability. You make yourself the person who has the next piece. You keep the thread open. You stay needed, and therefore you stay. What's remarkable is that this can run entirely below conscious awareness. You're not sitting with a plan. You're just noticing that the thought, "I could send them that contact," comes and goes without becoming an action, and your body relaxes slightly when it goes. That relaxation is the tell. It's the nervous system completing the move it was trained to make. John Kabat-Zinn, 1990, made an observation that changed how psychologists think about behavioral change. Simply watching a behavior without trying to fix it reduces its emotional charge enough that the behavior often shifts on its own. The observation does the work that willpower couldn't. You don't have to wrestle the pattern into submission, you just have to see it clearly. Name it without flinching, and stay there for a moment longer than is comfortable. The mechanism here maps directly. When you notice, "I didn't send the contact and my body relaxed," you've decentered from the pattern. You're no longer inside it, you're watching it. And from that distance, you get to ask a question that the pattern never let you ask before. What would actually happen if I gave everything? Not dramatically. Not as a test. Just what would happen? Because the fear underneath this pattern isn't that you'd be taken for granted, though that might come next. The fear is that you'd be fully given and still left. That complete generosity would produce the same outcome as careful withholding, which means the withholding was never protecting you at all. It was just costing you. Here's what the research on relational security consistently shows. The people who give completely, who pass the contact and fix the problem and open the door all the way, don't become less valued. They become the person the other person thinks of first, not because they made themselves useful, but because they made the other person feel safe. Safety is what people come back for. Control is what people eventually leave. So here's where this becomes something you can actually do something with. The first step isn't to fix the pattern. Remember Kabat-Zinn, the observation is the intervention. For 1 week, when you notice yourself stopping just short, don't override it immediately. Just name it, quietly, to yourself. I'm holding the key. That's it. No self-criticism, no forced correction, just the name. You'll be surprised how often the naming alone makes the hand move. If you want to go one step further, pick one person in your life you've been helping in this way, not the whole problem, just the next piece, and send the whole thing. The contact, the method, the specific thing you've been almost sending. Send it today, not as a grand gesture, just as a quiet test of what the other side of the door feels like. You might find that you're not replaced. You might find that they come back more, not less. Because now the relationship is built on something other than your controlled indispensability. And if the old fear surfaces, if you feel the nervous system reach for the key again, you don't have to shame it. It kept you close to people when closeness was hard to find. It was a good tool for a specific room. You're in a different room now. You're allowed to set the key down. You're allowed to give the whole answer and still be wanted afterwards. You're allowed to stop managing the distance and see what closes it naturally. One person, one thing you've been almost sending tonight. If something in this landed for you, the next video pulls on a thread that runs right alongside it. I'll see you there. If you recognized the move, even a small version of it, tell me in the comments which part landed. I read every reply.
That's all for today. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't. I'll see you in the next observation.